calling that to my attention. Shall share her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael Ben Arav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas Ben Arav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbeth Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell, and Irving and Pearl Kaplan, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir Ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, China Bas Yeshaya, friends of Toby Paris, Saratova Bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levy, Malka Bat Yosef, friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef Ben Chaim, many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom Ben Yitzchak Halevi, A Month of Learning by Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her father, Yosef Eliezer Ben Zvi Hirsch, by B. Pizer, in memory of her father, Yisachar Dov Ben Shmuel, by Mordechai and Miriam Burr, in memory of his mother, Manya Bas Harav Shimon Halevi, by Stanley Presser, in memory of his wife, Chayalea Bat Ze'ev HaKohen. I have A Week of Learning by Bonnie Gelb Jackson, in memory of her father, Mordechai Yoel Ben Binyamin. Then, as of today, the 25th, there is no one, and so that concludes the list. I mean, Shemus Heaven Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshir, Shema Taliyah, and the Chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Gaben Shtian. Okay. Now, the question is, where do we start? Where do we pick up today? Okay. In order to do so, I'm going to suggest that we actually are going to start towards the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Okay? All right. The Gemara there, all right? Okay, so I'm going to suggest we start up. The discussion was whether or not the Kohen Gadol could carry out his office, his avoda, as a mourner. Okay, and right, there's a statement here where we see the following. Basically, let's go. I just want to get reasonable. Okay. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom on Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Tanu Rabbanan starts at the line. Okay. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Tanu Rabbanan, Kohen Gadol Makriv Onen, that a Kohen Gadol may continue to offer the offerings when he is in the status of a severe mourner. Okay. Ve'eno ochel, but the Braita says he does not eat the from these offerings. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol Hayom. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the answer is that it means throughout the entire day. But if it's Yom Kippur, of course he's not going to eat throughout the day. And so why this statement of Rabbi Yehuda? Mai Kol Hayom. What then does Rabbi Yehuda mean when he implies throughout the day? Amar Rava, says Rava, lo nitzracha ela lahavio mitoch beito. According to Rava, that lest he bring something from his home, okay? That he brought something perhaps to eat to deal with his sense of loss, okay? Right? Amar le Abai, and Abai responds, Hashta le Rabbi Yehuda, afuki mafkinim le. So Abai says, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, okay, it seems like we should remove him from the Beis Hamikdash, from the carrying out the avoda. Why? Because we have another Braita that says as follows, Tanya, Haya omedu makriv al gabe hamizbeach. If there is a Kohen who is performing the an avoda, acts of avoda, on the altar, v'shama shemet lo met, and he learns at that time that a close relative has expired, okay? Maniach avodato. V'yotzei, says this Braita, that he leaves the service and goes out. Divrei Rebbe Yehuda. That seems to be the view of Rebbe Yehuda. Okay, so how can we say that he could continue? Rabbi Yossi Omer Gamor, Yigmor. Rabbi Yossi says, however, that he should complete his service. V'at amart maitinem le mitoch beito, and you say that he's going to bring something from his home. Ela amar Rava. So therefore Rava suggests an alternative. Says Rava, Mai kol hayom. What do we mean then throughout the day? As we go over to Yudalit, today's daf, I believe, right? Lomar she'eno oved kol hayom. It means to say that he doesn't officiate the entire day. Gezerah shema yochal, lest, okay, he come to eat something. Now, Amarle Rav Adabar Ahava Rava. And so now, another challenge, if you will, to Rava. Umigazar Rabbi Yehuda Shema Yochal. Did Rabbi Yehuda make this decree because the person might eat, okay, in the situation of being a mourner? V'hatnan. But aren't we taught elsewhere again in a Mishnah the following? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says, Af isha acheret matkinin lo shema tamut ishto. That they, let's say they prepare, or they have another woman available for him, lest his wife dies. Ve'i maita ishto avid avodah. And if the wife would die, okay, would he continue with the carrying out the worship? V'lo gazar Rebbe Yehuda shema yochal. And therefore it can't be that Rebbe Yehuda says, lest he eat. Okay. Amar le, they said to him, Hachi hashta. Now what's the case here? Hatam kevan de yom kippurim hu. There it's because it's the Day of Atonement. The kuli alma lo kal achle. Because the whole world doesn't eat then. Who nami lo ate lemechal. He himself then would also not come to eat under those circumstances. Hacha, but here under other conditions, let's say, the kuli alma achle, where other people are able to eat, hu nami ate lemechal. Okay, isn't it possible that he would then also come to eat? V'chihai gavna, but in that case, says the Gemara, mi chayla ale aninut. Okay, would we say then that he would be placed in a situation of being a mourner, of such severe mourning? Okay, v'ha migrisha, but didn't he divorce her? Okay, nehi the aninut lo chayil ale. In that case, we would therefore declare that there would be no aninut on him in those situations. Right. Milo mitred, but nevertheless, I'm going to fill in, okay, wouldn't he certainly be tarud? In other words, he would be distracted. His thoughts would be not able to focus, nevertheless, on the avoda. And we finish that piece. Okay, since our Gemara now is talking about this Kohen Gadol that's been sequestered and issues of his ability to carry out his performance, whether it's regards to mourning, whether it's regards to other situations, okay? The new Mishnah is going to continue to deal with certain, let's say, parts of the role performance of the Kohen Gadol. And we're focused now particularly on the 7 days when that Kohen Gadol is sequestered. Okay? So our new Mishnah teaches, Kol Shivat Hayamim Hu Zoreket Hadam. In other words, during the 7-day period, part of the, let's call it education, let's call it the review of what goes on for the Yom Kippur service, is that he has to also not just learn it, if I can use that term, but put it into practice. And so therefore our Mishnah is telling us during these 7 days of sequestering, he also performs the act of sprinkling the blood on the daily olot, the daily burnt offering. What else? Umaktirat katoret. And he also prepares the incense. He burns the incense. Umetiv etanerot. And he also is involved in removing the ashes primarily from the menorah. Okay? Right? Going on. Umakriv etarosh. Okay, and what does he do? Ve'etaregel. And he also is the one who, okay, is the first to take the offering of the head and the let's say hindquarter, that area, because those are the hind leg, those are the first things that are generally removed, okay, when it comes to the offering, okay? Ushar kol hayamim, and the other days, in other words, normally outside of the 7 sequestered days, the question is, what about the Kohen Gadol then? Okay, im ratzah lahakriv makriv. If he chooses to be involved in the avoda of in any cases, right, he may do so. Shekohen Gadol makriv chelik barosh v'notel chelik barosh. Because the Kohen Gadol gets the first of the portions, and he gets to take also the first of the portions. Okay. Now, the Gemara asks, under this circumstances, Ma'antana, who is it that taught this particular Mishnah, right? Amar Rav Chisda, Deloka Rabbi Akiva. Rav Chisda tells us that this Mishnah cannot be the view of Rabbi Akiva. Why? De'i Rabbi Akiva, because were it to be the view of Rabbi Akiva, Ha'amar, isn't it such that he had said, Tohor shenafla alav haza'ah tama'ato, that person who is tahor, when the, let's put it for the moment, I'm going to use the word contact, okay, all right, or sprinkling. In other words, some contact with the water of the para aduma is going to render him tameh. Hechi avid avoda. If that's the case, how would he do the sacrificial service? The Tanya, because a Braita teaches as follows: V'hizah hatahor al hatameh. According to the pasuk, it says one sprinkles a tahor person on a tameh person. Al hatameh tahor. When it says on the impure person, it's to render them tahor, pure. V'al hatahor tameh. And on a pure person, it renders them tameh. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That, says the Braita, is the view of Rabbi Akiva. B'chachamim omrim. However, the sages say, ein hadvarim halalu amurim. That isn't what the words of the pasuk imply. Ela bidvarim hamikablim tuma. But rather it's in regards to those items that are susceptible, I'm using that word, to becoming tamei. Maihi, so what then is this all about? Keditnan, as taught elsewhere in another Mishnah, where it says, Nitkavein lahazot al habehema v'hiza al ha'adam. Okay, the Kohen's intent was to sprinkle the, let's say, para aduma mixture, okay, purification water on an animal, but instead accidentally sprinkled it on a person. Im yesh be'ezov yishaneh, if there is enough liquid still on the hyssop, he repeats it. In other words, he does not have to dip the hyssop back into the water again to do it another time, okay, to correct the situation. Nitkavein lahazot al ha'adam, if his intent was to sprinkle it on a person, v'hiza al habehema, and instead by accident he sprinkled it on an animal. Im yesh be'ezov, if there is water, okay, still on the hyssop, lo yishana, he cannot immediately repeat it. Instead, he must dip it again because there was not the appropriate kavanah in doing what the purification process. Okay. Mai tama de Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara asks, so what's the rationale behind Rabbi Akiva's view? Nichtov rachmana v'hizaha tahor alav. So let the Torah simply say clearly that he sprinkles by the person who's tahor, who is pure, on him. Mai al hatamei. Why then did the Torah have to say on the impure person? Shma mina al hatamei tahor, the al hatahor tamei. Rabbi Akiva learns from that what it means is the one that is tamei becomes tahor, but the one that is tahor becomes tamei. V'Rabbanan, again, Rabbi Akiva's view, as far as the rabbis go, Hai lidvarim hamikablim tuma hi ra'at da'ata. Okay, namely that as far as the rabbis who disagree with him, okay, their words are referring to tuma when it comes. Aval hacha kal v'chomerhu. But here we could argue a kal v'chomer. Im al hatame tahor. If sprinkling is going to result in an impure person becoming pure, al hatahor lo kol shekain. On the person that's pure, isn't it all the more so that it should have a impact, so to speak? The Rabbi Akiva. So what about the view then of Rabbi Akiva? Implying that the rabbis would say, if it purifies an impure person, why then should it have a negative impact on a pure person? So therefore, Rabbi Akiva, what is his view? Hainu dika'amar Shlomo. It's as if Rabbi Akiva would say, it's similar to the view of King Solomon, right? Shlomo HaMelech, who, when he attempted to study and understand the unique quality of this mixture, his response in Kohelet was, Amarti achakma vehi rechoka mimeni. I said I would try to reason to understand what it is, but it was distant from me. In other words, he could not comprehend and come up with a, let's say, rational explanation. Okay. Hahu Barabbanan, and as far as the rabbis go, what about their view? Hahu Lamaza Ulamazin alav tahor. This comes to indicate that the one who sprinkles and the one upon whom it was sprinkled, okay, become tahor. V'nogea bahem, but one who might have contact with this water, tameh, that is the person that can become impure. So the Gemara asks, Umazeh tahor, the one who sprinkles is going to become pure. Vahaktiv, but isn't it clearly written in the pasuk? Umazeh me hanida yichabes begadav, that the one who sprinkles then this mehanida, the case, this, right, the water of sprinkling, okay, in this case, let's translate it that way, will wash his garments. Okay, so what does it mean here? Me'ai mazeh. In that pasuk, then, what does it mean? Sprinkles, nogea, one who has contact with it. V'haktiv mazeh, but the pasuk clearly says sprinkles. V'haktiv nogea, and elsewhere it says contact. V'od, and furthermore, right? Mazeh by kibus begadim, that the person, and another pasuk told us already, that the one who does the sprinkling requires the washing of the garments. Okay? And so therefore the Gemara goes on to tell us, Nogea lo bai kibus begadim. But it would seem that the person who simply had contact with it is not required to have to wash the garments, which would seem to imply that person does not become tameh. Elamai mazeh. So what then do we mean by sprinkle in the pasuk? No say. Maybe it means the person who carries it. So the Gemara says, V'nichtov rachmana no say. So let the Torah actually say the word no say in that situation instead of mazeh. Mai tama kativ mazeh. So what then is the reason that it's written mazeh, sprinkles? Hakamash malan. Here it comes to tell us and teach us the ba'inan shi'ur hazah, that it's required a certain measurement for sprinkling. So the Gemara now responds to that idea. Ha-nechelaman da'amar haza'ah tzricha shi'ur. That's acceptable for those who argue that for the purpose of sprinkling, there needs to be a minimum measure, right? Ela laman da'amar haza'ah en tzricha shi'ur. But according to those who argue that there is no requirement for a certain minimum measurement, mai ikalamema, what are you going to say then? Afilu laman da'amar haza'ah ein tzricha shi'ur. Even according to those who say that there is no requirement, no minimum measurement for the amount of purification water, hani mili agaba de gavra. We're talking there about a situation where the water is going, let's say, on the back of the person. Aval b'mana, but in terms of a vessel, tzricha shi'ur, there it does require a minimum amount of water. T'tnan, as taught elsewhere in the Mishnah, right? Kama yehe bahen v'yehe kedei haza'ah. How much must be in it? And that it will be, I'm going to use the word sufficient for the moment, necessary, right, for the sprinkling. As we continue, kedei yidbol roshe, let's turn over, gav olin v'yazeh. Enough so that,
yeah. But where does it come up with the concept that it's sprinkled on the person's back? I've never seen any reference to the part of the body that it's sprinkled on before.
Right. Right. No, usually oftentimes we say, for example, it's sprinkled on his, for Mitzora, on his ear, on this, things like that. But this may be talking about another kind of situation. In other words, if he became tameh by contact with something, that may be this example. Okay, so that's, in other words, there it has to be enough so that the stems, at least, okay, when you dip the hyssop into the liquid, okay, it comes all the way up to the stems, right? Now, Abaye Amar, Afilu Tema Rabbi Akiva. Abaye says that might apply even with the perspective of Rabbi Akiva. Da'avid avoda kule yoma, because then the high priest could officiate the entire day, right? And what happens? Vilifnaya, and then as it gets on towards the prior to Yom Kippur, okay, they could sprinkle him, madu alei, right? So that would happen is that they would sprinkle him, right? Vitavil, and then he could immerse completely. Va'avid ha'erev hashemesh, and then he would wait till sundown, and he would be completely done then with his purification process. That's the first issue. Now, what about the other items that our Mishnah said? Umaktir et haketoret, umetiv et hanerot. According to our, what we're just reading in the Mishnah, it seems to indicate that this Kohen, and it could be the Kohen Gadol, would follow a process in which he would burn the incense and then afterwards remove the ash or remove some of the oil from the, let's call it the lamps in the candelabra. Okay? Now, the Gemara is going to be concerned here with the question of, this seems to be the order that this Mishnah says the, I'm going to use the word avoda in general, is carried out. However, we're going to see that's a question. Alma, I'm going to say that therefore, hence, ketoret beresha v'hadar nerot. This seems to tell us that the incense comes first, and then comes the dealing with the lamps. Or minhu, but we'll bring a challenge to that, right? From another example, another text that's going to raise the following. Mi shezacha b'dishon mizbeach hapnimi. Okay, remember there used to be a lottery, and the lottery is described in Gemara and Masechet Tamid. So among one of the first things to be done in the first lottery, okay, that they would draw jobs for would be cleaning out the previous night's ash in the lamps of the menorah. Okay? And so therefore, we're now citing that Mishnah in Tamid that says as follows, from this first lottery, Mi shezacha b'dishon mizbeach hapnimi, the one who merited, let's say, okay, to clean out the, okay, in this case, the ashes from the inner altar, umi shezacha b'menorah, and then one who merited to clean the candelabra, umi shezacha b'ketoret, and the one who merited to light the incense. Now that text in Tamid seems to imply that what came first was the cleaning of the lamps and then the burning of incense. Okay? So what happened then? We seem to have this contradiction. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna responds, Man Tana Tamid. Who is the Tana who then taught it that way in Gemara Tamid? Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah. That's who it is. Okay? Rabbi Shimon of Mitzpah. Vaha Ibcha Shma'inen Le. Okay, and here we have, sounds like we learn the opposite. Ditnan. Why? Because it says, Balo Lekeren Mizrachit. We see that for the cleaning of the Mizbeach there, right? What does he do? Balo Lekeren Mizrachit Tzfonit. He first comes to the northeast corner. Notain Mizrachat Tzfona. Okay. And what does he do? He sprinkles on that northeast corner. Ma'aravit Dromit, the southeast corner. Notain Ma'arava Droma. He sprinkles on, puts the blood on the southeast corner. V'taniela, Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah. Okay, but we've learned that Rabbi Shimon Ish Mitzpah, right? What does he do? Okay, Mishnah B'Tamid. What he says in a Mishnah in Tamid, Mizrachit Tzfonit, the northeast notain Mizrachat Tzfona. He sprinkles, puts it on the northeast. Ma'aravit Dromit, the southeast, notain Ma'arava. He puts it on the east first. I'm sorry, on the west, Ma'arav. West first, V'achar kach notain Droma. And afterwards puts it on the south. Ella, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan therefore was prompted where he sees this other example of a contradiction. Mantana Seder Yoma. Then who was it that taught the order in our text here in Masechet Yoma? Rabbi Shimon Ish HaMitzpah. Okay. It seems to also have been Rabbi Shimon Ish Mitzpah. If that's the case, says the Gemara, Varami Seder Yoma, a Seder Yoma, that there therefore seems then to be a contradiction between one example in Seder Yoma and another example in Seder Yoma. Why? T'tanan, because we learn elsewhere in another Mishnah, Piyes Hasheni, the second lottery. Okay, what happens? What's the order there? Mi shochet, who slaughters? Mi zori, who sprinkles? Mi medashen mizbeach hapnimi, who it is that cleans out, removes the ashes from the inner altar. Umi medashen et menorah, and who is it that removes the ash or the oil from the candelabra? Umi ma'ale evarim lakeves, and who is it that carries up the offering parts on the ramp? And then the text continues, P'es hashlishi, the third lottery, Chadashim Liktoret Ba'u Vehavisu. Okay, as far as the third lottery goes, only new Kohanim are being eligible, I'm going to use the word, for the incense. Come and participate
in the lottery.
in the lottery. Okay. So in other words, here too, this seems to tell us again that the ash, from the menorah for the lamps was cleaned before any of the incense. So again, we seem to have a problem here as to what was the appropriate order, whether the incense was done first, whether the cleaning of the lamps was done first. What is it? So we now continue with the following. Amar Abaye, okay? And Abaye is going to tell us as follows. Okay? I'm grabbing another sefer for a moment, and then we continue. What does he say? Lo kasha. It doesn't have to be problematic. Kan bahatavat shtei nerot. Kan bahatavat chamesh nerot. Namely, Abaye is saying, in one case, we have the cleaning of 2 lamps after the incense. And here, in the other case, the other text is talking about the cleaning of 5 of the lamps before the incense is burnt. Lememra, to tell us, the B'ketoret mafsik laho. Does this then come to tell us that in regards to lighting of the incense, there was a intermission, a break? Is that what it was telling us? Vaha Abaye misader ma'aracha mishmei d'gmara. But here, isn't Abaye telling us the order of the procedure, let's say, as was taught by the tradition, ubadam hatamid mafsik lahu. And there, aren't we under the understanding that it was only in regards to the blood, that was what was going to interrupt, to make the separation, in this case. Amre. So we have to say, lo kasha. Indeed, there is not necessarily a problem. Hahi la Abba Shaul. In one case, we have the view of Abba Shaul. Ha la Rabbanan. In the other case, we have the order as clarified by the rabbis. The Tanya, as taught in a Braita, the following: Lo yetiv et hanerot, ve'achar kach yaktir. Telling us, namely that one should not clean out the lamps and then light the incense. Ela yaktir, but one should light the incense, ve'achar kach yetiv, and then afterwards burn, clean out, trim the lamps, to take care of the lamps. Abba Shaul Omer, but Abba Shaul, however, says, Metiv v'achar kach maktir. He disagrees, and he says, no, says Abba Shaul, what? That you first prepare the lamps, remove the excess oil or the ash, and then you light the incense. So the Gemara asks, Mai tama da Abba Shaul? What was Abba Shaul's reasoning in this regard? Dichtiv, because it's written, namely, in the pasuk, Baboker behetivo et hanerot, namely, each morning or morning, when one dresses, deals with, cleans, trims, however we want to translate, the lamps. Vahada yaktiv. And then afterwards, it says he kindles the incense, burns the incense. Right? Now, just a reminder of that, okay? In the morning, davening, right? When, if I remember correctly, right? We have as part of Kabbanos, okay? The Abai have a Mesader Seder HaMa'aracha, Mishmad Gemara, Va'ali Bada Abba Shaul. Okay? In Kabbanos, we say in the davening in the morning. And then it goes through the order such that it tells us there they did 5, then there was an interruption, and then they did the last 2. Okay? So, Gemara, however, wants us to just pick up, and we'll only do slightly here because it gets a little convoluted, because I want to go over it in more detail tomorrow. Okay? The Rabbanan, and the rabbis then, what's their view? Ma'ika Amar Rachmana. What is the Torah trying to teach us here? Right? Namely, Be'idan Hatava Tehe Maktir Ketoret. That the time that the lamps, the candles, whatever term we want to use here, are prepared, are cleaned, lit, etc., that is the same time for the burning of the
incense.
And we're going to stop right there on the top of Ted Vav, okay? Because then we get into a long discussion on this topic, and I want to have us look at that a little bit separately tomorrow, okay? So we'll stop here. All right. Wish everybody a good day.